know you're clinging to the light of day, to tell you everything's a-okay, and medication don't do much. Yeah, it just numbs the brain. Guess you might say I'm a little intense. I'm on the bright side of being hell-bent. So take it from me, you're not the only one who can't see straight. If you were ever in doubt, don't sell yourself short. You might be bulletproof, hard to move.
Well, I guess we'll see if other people show up. Do you know if anybody else is coming today?
I actually have no idea. I didn't text the group chat.
All right, well, I will send a question or I'll send something out and see if anybody else is planning on coming. I would be surprised if nobody else shows up, but you never know.
It's also the first one, so I don't know if everybody knows that it's today, but I know you sent out the Schoology,
Yeah,
so I'd be surprised too if anybody else doesn't come.
I would be sad. I mean, I guess it is what it is, but I'd still be sad.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
That's good.
I'm
Have you,
sorry, go ahead.
since the last week we talked, is there anything cool that you've been up to?
No,
Just,
I went no, I think when did I talk to you? On Friday? Yeah, I haven't done anything cool since then. I'm basically isolating like we're supposed to, which, I mean, yay and sucky, but
yeah.
Cameron just responded to my message and said she'll be on in a minute. I just really wanted to talk to you guys about your case studies and what the answers for your case studies should look like today. So when Cameron gets on here, we'll cover that.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't really been up to anything. I just got my announcements, so
The graduation announcements?
I've been writing addresses so I can send them out.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time since I've done graduation announcements, but I kind of remember that that's a little bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's taken forever. But I thought I'd still send them out even though we probably won't have a
Yeah.
graduation together, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's rough. That stinks really bad.
But it's all for the safety of everybody, so I get it, and everybody else gets it, even though it's a little sad.
Yeah, well, Cameron obviously didn't get my message about the meeting password. 041696. 041696. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Cameron.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for giving me the password.
Oh, you're welcome. Morgan, you're still on mute. Hi. I mean, you can unmute yourself or leave yourself muted, whichever you prefer.
Hi, my brother's walking around. I didn't know if he was gonna try to do something.
Darn pain in the butt, brothers. Okay, well, today I really just wanted to talk to you guys about your case studies and tell you what my expectations for your case studies are. And I think the best way for me to do that is for me to run through, or at least start running through the chapter 24 case study. And then we can discuss it, you know, as you guys are on, as you're here or whatever. All right. So let me share my screen here. Share my case study. All right. Presentation view. Okay, so here we go. So when you pull up your case studies for your for these chapters, I have taken these case studies and I've removed the answers from the comment fields for you guys or from the notes fields, because I want you guys to figure this out. So This is the way a case study works. You are given this information, so we can start this right here. You and your EMT partner dispatch to the scene of a reported rollover type motor vehicle crash. As you approach the scene, you see skid marks on the roadway continuing off into the dirt. After ensuring the safety of the scene, you approach your patient. You find a 33-year-old man lying supine in the dirt. Bystanders state that they assisted the patient from his vehicle after witnessing the vehicle roll over multiple times. Approximately 30 feet from the patient, you see what appears to be a vehicle on its top in a ravine. How does the basic understanding of kinetic energy contribute to the care of trauma patients? And what does your index of suspicion tell you about the potential injuries to your patient? Whoops, I want to go backwards there. And then I want to go out of the big screen just so you can see what the answers here are in the notes field. So the question number 1 is, how does the basic understanding of kinetic energy contribute to the care of trauma patients? And the instructor notes in here, which are the answer, it says, understanding the concept of kinetic energy helps to provide clues concerning how much energy was transmitted to a trauma patient based on the mass of the impacting object and its speed, and how and where the injuries to the body may be based on that transmitted energy. So that answers the question in a paragraph format, and it's a full answer to the question. There's a fly or something in here. I'm sorry. You can't see me anyway because you're looking at my screen, so you can't see me swatting at a fly. Okay, so then number 2 is, what does your index of suspicion tell you about the potential injuries to your patient? First, what's the index of suspicion?
It's what you think the injury might be.
Hi, Trey.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. I woke
Good.
up early so I could attend. So
good.
Yeah.
Great. You're right. So the index of suspicion is what you think might be wrong with your patient. Based on what?
Based on the Nui.
Based on the mechanism. Yeah. Based on the mechanism of injury.
Trauma.
All right. So in this case, the skid marks and the fact that the car rolled several times indicate that he was traveling at a considerable speed and that his body impacted parts of the car multiple times. What are the impacts? What are the 3 impacts in any collision?
Object to body, body to body, body to organs.
Object to object, body to object, organs to body. Okay. So in this case, remember when we did mechanisms of injury in class and we did those, we did collisions, right? And every time we had a collision, we had to worry about what the object impacted first, what part of the body impacted the object, and then what organs are behind that part of the body that then impacted the inside of the body, right? So in a rollover, every time part of the vehicle hit the ground, every time part of the vehicle hit a tree, every time the stop mechanism in the seatbelt stopped the seatbelt, that is an impact. That is an object-to-object impact. Then we have the body-to-object impacts, which happen right after that, and the organ-to-body impacts. So in every collision, we have to think about what impact happened to the organs or the body after every impact. So he's at risk of spinal and or head trauma and may also have chest, abdominal, or extremity injuries, depending on how his body hit the ground or hit whatever the other parts are. Okay, so those are the 2 answers that would be, they're complete sentences and they're kind of in a paragraph format-ish. So complete sentences really is kind of what I'm looking for, as well as covering all of the things that you need to know in order to make those determinations, because I can't see you when you're working on these anymore. So I'm not going to know if you guys are understanding unless you explain it to me. Each question in these each question in these case studies is worth 5 points. There is one question, I think it's in pediatrics, so maybe like chapter 33 or 34, that is worth 10 points because there's so much information in that question. Okay, so when these are submitted, and you can submit them in a Word document, you can copy and paste them, into your submission. I don't care. I just need to make sure that I get them before Friday. Friday at midnight, I think, is the decision that was, well, only 3 people said anything on that Schoology question, and 2 of them asked for Friday at midnight, and then your quizzes will be open from Saturday morning at 12:01 until Sunday evening at 11:59. So since the two people asked for that, and 1 person asked for the case studies to be due on Thursday so they could have 3 days to do their quizzes, we're going to go with what the 2 people asked for. So fair enough? All right. Okay, so part 2. While you initiate patient care, your partner proceeds to the vehicle to gain a better understanding of the accident and to ensure that there are no additional patients. Your partner returns stating that the car is in fact on its roof and approximately 3 feet down the side of the ravine. The windshield is shattered, the airbag deployed, and the steering wheel deformed. There's approximately 8 inches of roof intrusion into the passenger compartment. The driver's, what does roof intrusion mean?
Would that be
Saying the roof is caved in?
Yeah, the roof is caved in. So if the roof is supposed to be, 4 feet from the seat, if there's 8 inches of roof intrusion, that means that into the passenger compartment, the metal from the roof has gone down in 8 inches. Make sense? Okay. The driver's side seatbelt is intact and no other patients were found. Bystanders confirm that this is the only patient and that he was unrestrained. Now I'm a little bit
does that mean no
suspicious.
seatbelt?
That means he was not wearing his seatbelt. Yeah,
which is
unrestrained.
It's likely another patient wasn't wearing the seatbelt.
It's possible that there was another patient that was not wearing the seatbelt. Your partner has told you that he didn't find another patient, and the bystanders say that he was the only patient. Okay. At the beginning of this case study, the bystanders told you that they got him out of, right here, bystanders state they assisted him from his vehicle after witnessing the vehicle roll multiple times. So even though he was unrestrained, they believe he was the only person in the vehicle. And because they had to assist him out of his vehicle, he was not ejected during the rollover. Make sense? All right. So, how does the mechanism of injury influence the treatment of your patient? Think about all the things that we just learned about the patient's vehicle.
If he was unrestrained, he would have a lot more mechanism of injuries than if he was strained in a seatbelt, because there'd be head to windshield, chest to steering wheel. He could have even hit the other side of the doors, the ceiling, or the roof of the car.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. The fact that he was unrestrained likely means that he's going to have more severe injuries than he would have had he been restrained. Because if he had been restrained, the object to object impact for him, even though, he's going to roll over however many times he rolled over, the object to object impact is the seatbelt and the seatbelt stopping the seatbelt to try and keep him in his seat. That means that body to object is much less severe because he's not traveling as far, and organ to body is also much less severe. So because he was unrestrained, it's quite likely that he has way more of a significant mechanism of injury and more and different injuries than he would have had he been restrained. So the answer that is listed here is because he was unrestrained and there was considerable vehicle damage, especially to the windshield and steering wheel, he bounced around in the vehicle and is at a high risk of multi-system trauma and rapid deterioration. He needs to be rapidly transported to the hospital with ALS intercept. Spinal motion restriction precautions should be utilized, and he should be watched closely for signs of shock or respiratory compromise and rapidly treated. Assessment and treatment of non-life-threatening injuries can be done en route to the hospital. So that's the answer for question number 3. Number 4, all of the vehicle damage demonstrates that there was a lot of kinetic energy transmitted to the patient, which could cause significant damage to internal organs. I can't read the bottom of that. I don't know why. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Can you guys see my screen and tell me why I can't read it?
You might need to make the notes thing bigger by yeah.
Ha ha! Look at that. Nice job, Trey. Okay, all of the vehicle damage demonstrates that there was a lot of kinetic energy transmitted to the patient, which could cause significant damage to internal organs, especially the liver, resulting in potentially massive internal bleeding and shock.
Is there a reason the liver is affected the most? Or especially the liver would be?
It's just really, really, really vascular, and there's a lot of blood there. Not as much blood as the spleen would have, but the spleen is slightly better protected.
Okay.
The steering wheel also kind of, the fact that the steering wheel is deformed means he likely hit the steering wheel with something, and that's likely his chest. All right. Your patient is conscious, alert, and disoriented. Does that make sense? Can he be disoriented and alert?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yes, because he could have gotten a concussion or is frightened and doesn't really know what's going on.
Okay. So how does alert and disoriented, how do those phrases work together?
He could have spontaneous eye opening and watch you walk towards him, but when you ask questions, he won't know how to answer.
Good. Good job, Trey. You find that he has a patent airway, is breathing at a rate of 12 labored breaths per minute. What do you think would indicate to us that his breaths are labored?
Gasping. All of our things that we had earlier. If there is assisted muscles, wait, what are they called?
Accessory.
Accessory muscles.
Yeah, accessory muscle use. So what types of accessory muscle use might we see in this patient?
Would
Could
you
we
see
see-
tripod position?
We could see tripod position. Was he standing up or was he seated? Do we know? Does it say in here anywhere?
I have no idea. I can't
Yeah, I don't
see
think
your
it says
He's
in here.
lying supine in the dirt.
Oh, if he's laying down, then no. But I didn't know if he was seated or standing up.
Nope, it says he's lying supine in the dirt. Let's see. Okay, you find, let's see. Okay, so labored respirations, probably not in tripod position if he's laying supine in the dirt. I would like to point out, though, that if your patient is struggling to breathe and you have not yet taken spinal immobilization precautions, it is not likely that your patient is going to be lying supine in the dirt. Their body doesn't like it. It doesn't want them to be laying down if they're having problems breathing because it's easier for them to breathe if they are upright and sitting up. Okay? All right. He is pale and cool to the touch and has weak distal pulses. What does weak distal pulses mean to you?
It means that blood isn't getting to his the distal regions of his body as much.
Which means what, Trey?
Poor heart flow, blood flow.
Does it mean that? What does it mean?
Less perfusion is happening in the further extremities.
Okay,
maybe?
and why?
Ah.
Why would the body be perfusing less to the distal pulses?
Lack of blood, possibly.
No, is it because your body is trying to send that blood elsewhere to more vital organs to keep
Yes,
them?
your body is trying to make sure that the things that are necessary for life are staying perfused. So, your body is trying to keep blood from the surface and it's trying to make sure that the blood is at the organs that need to be taken care of. Your heart, your lungs, your brain. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You find no apparent major external bleeding. Pulse oximetry shows 92% oxygen saturation. While you apply high flow supplemental oxygen, your partner calls for ALS backup. How can potential injuries differ in a rollover collision versus a lateral or frontal collision?
Well, there's the side to side motion, which will give you whiplash in different ways rather than the front and backwards collision.
What is another thing that potentially happens in a lateral collision that is less likely to happen in a frontal collision?
Hitting the window, side window.
Let's talk
No,
about
the other-
injuries to the body. Go ahead, Morgan.
I was going to say the other vehicle tends to kind of stop or minimize you continuing to move forward. Especially if it's a head-on collision, you either move back a little bit and it kind of ceases to stop your vehicle from moving. While a rollover, you can continue to roll because there's less things in the way to try to stop your movement.
Okay. So in a lateral collision, there's a specific injury that is more likely to happen in that type of collision than a frontal collision. And does anybody remember what that type of injury is?
Whiplash?
It's not a broken arm or shoulder, is it?
No. It's an internal organ. Remember what happens when can you guys see my hands, or are you only seeing my screen?
We could see your hands.
Okay. Oh, good. Perfect. Okay. So remember when you are doing a frontal collision and it goes like this? What happens to the bodies of both people?
It
You go
can
forward and then you
forward
go
and
back.
up or down.
Okay, so if you think about your body, your rib cage here, the organs inside your rib cage, what happened to those organs?
They slam forward.
Yeah, they hit the rib cage, basically. If you're in a rear end collision or you're in a frontal collision, those organs on the inside hit the rib cage. When you're in a lateral collision, think about the space inside your rib cage again and the organs inside your rib cage. When you're in a lateral collision, what happens to the organs in a lateral collision?
The lungs go in and compress towards the side.
Yeah, and so what happens to the heart?
It gets
also
moved between the two.
The heart gets moved too. And unfortunately for us, our aorta is pretty dang secure, right? So if our heart gets moved sideways, but our aorta can't move, we can wind up with an aortic rupture. And aortic ruptures are more likely to occur in a lateral collision than a frontal collision. They can also occur in a rollover collision because the mechanisms are lateral, frontal, rotational. There are all sorts of those types of mechanisms. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the answers here for number 5, a lateral collision results primarily in injuries to body on the side of the impact, such as rib fractures, extremity fractures, and sideward whiplash to the neck. Frontal collisions can cause impact of the chest and abdomen with the steering wheel and airbag, head injuries from impact with the windshield, and the coupe contra coupe forces and potential damage to the spine. What was coupe contra coupe again?
Was
Noah?
that
Go ahead.
was that something to do with the brain
It
hitting
is.
something?
Yep. So when the brain hits the front of the skull and then it bounces backwards and hits the back of the skull, we have coupe contra coupe forces. Okay.
So when it hits the back, then the front, that's counter contra coupe?
I think it would still be coupe contra coupe because it just is the impact and then back.
Okay.
I'll look that up and I'll try and look that up and I'll try to get back to you. Let me make a note for myself right now. Okay. All right. In both of those types of collisions, lateral as well as frontal or even a rear end collision, there's a pretty good idea of how the patient was impacted in relationship to the vehicle damage. In a rollover collision, any combination of injuries can happen because all of the other mechanisms have come into play there. We can have frontal, we can have lateral, we can have rotational. All of the different types of impacts that we talked about can occur in a rollover collision. And what are the 3 types of collisions that occur during a motor vehicle crash? We already talked about this. It is
Object.
Yeah, object to object.
Object.
Yep, body to object, and then Organs to body. Exactly. All right. An ALS unit is en route. Dispatch informs you that the ALS unit is 20 minutes from your location. With this in mind, you finish your secondary assessment. Further assessment shows severe bruising on his chest. His abdomen is rigid and warm to the touch, and his pelvis is unstable. All right, so we have severe bruising on his chest. What might that indicate?
Internal bleeding or damage to the chest.
Damage to the chest wall?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me how we're going to manage that. Our patient has labored respirations, right? Their SpO2 is 92%. We have severe bruising on his chest. It doesn't say anything about paradoxical motion, and there's no severe external bleeding. Based on labored respirations, an SpO2 of 92%, and severe bruising on his chest, what might we be able to infer, or what intervention should we use in order to manage our patient?
High flow oxygen.
We've applied high flow oxygen already. I'm pretty sure that it said that right here. Yep. You apply high flow supplemental oxygen. So my question for you right now is specific to what type of oxygen are we applying? Not type of oxygen. What mechanism or what oxygen delivery device are we using?
BVM.
Okay, we're going to use a BVM. Why are we going to choose to use BVM?
Because
It forces air into the body rather than letting, because I know with whenever there's some kind of abdominal trauma, you normally go with the BVM route, especially to make sure that all the organs are getting the necessary oxygen.
Are we talking about abdominal trauma, or are we talking about trauma to the chest?
Chest trauma, I mean.
Okay. There's a couple of reasons. Trey, did you have an idea?
Is it because since he has 12 breaths per minute and they're labored, he's obviously not getting enough oxygen. So we need to assist those ventilations to make sure that his total amount of oxygen goes up.
That's part of it. What is the normal respiratory rate for an adult?
12 to 20?
12 to 20. So is his respiratory rate appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. Is his oxygen saturation appropriate?
No.
No. What do we need his oxygen saturation to be at?
98.
98 would be great, but we would settle for 95, 94, 95. Okay. So that's why we applied high flow oxygen to begin with. We wanted to make sure that we could get that SpO2 up a little bit. Our patient is disoriented, which may mean that his brain is not getting enough oxygen. He's disoriented. He's got labored respirations. His respiratory rate is a little bit on the low side. It's still within normal range, but it's a little bit on the low side. He's got bruising to his chest. His abdomen is rigid and warm to the touch, and his pelvis is unstable. So we're going to use a BVM. What flow rate?
15 liters per minute.
Okay, how about what flow rate range?
12 to 18 liters per minute.
15 to 25 for a BVM. 15 to 25 liters per minute for a BVM. And how many breaths per minute are we going to deliver?
6 breaths per second, which would be
Not 6 breaths per second.
or
1 breath per 6 seconds.
1 breath per 6 seconds. Yeah.
One breath every 5 to 6 seconds, which is 10 to 12 breaths per minute. All right. Okay. His abdomen is rigid and warm to the touch, and his pelvis is unstable. How are we going to stabilize his pelvis?
Would it be spine boarding?
We will spine board him at some point, yes. But how specifically, how are we going to stabilize his pelvis?
Would you stabilize it to itself? By wrapping it.
Wrapping it with what, Trey?
What's the ace wrap that doesn't move one way but moves the other? It's not ace wrap, but it's a specific type of wrap.
We use what we call a pelvic binder, okay? And a pelvic binder is basically a splint it's not hard, it's not truly a splint, but it wraps around the patient's hips and you pull it nice and tight and wrap it across the top to keep the pelvis stable.
Would
So
this
we would, go ahead,
would
Trey.
it cause more gaps in your spine boarding that you'd need to, more voids that you'd need to fill?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, depending on how well you stabilize his pelvis. A pelvic stabilizer doesn't need to be so tight that it causes your patient pain, but it does need to be tight enough that it does help stabilize the patient, or stabilize the pelvis. And how can we tell if the pelvis is not stable?
If it moves?
What is the assessment? How do we assess the pelvis to determine whether or not it's stable?
Would it be a bilateral push test?
Pushing is part of it. What's the other part? Morgan, do you know?
Me? Oh, I don't know if the other Morgan was in here. Is it if you're feeling for any kind of false motion in there?
Yeah, and how do we assess for that false motion in the pelvis? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember, sorry.
It's all right. When we are doing our hands-on assessment and we get down to the pelvis, we push on the iliac crest, right? And then we go to the outside of the hips and we squeeze. Okay? If we feel false motion in those movements, in the pushing and the squeezing, we need to apply a pelvic binder. Okay. We quickly prepare our patient for transport. That includes our pelvic binder, spinal immobilization, etc. You are the eyes of the hospital staff. Okay, here we go. Did we already answer question 6? No, yep, we did. All right. Of what importance is the MUI and the extent of damage to the vehicle in your written and verbal communication? You are the eyes of the hospital staff at the scene. They only receive information that can point to the likelihood of less obvious internal injuries or potentially slower developing problems like shock through the description of the vehicle and scene that you provide. So what you see and what you tell them in your written and your verbal report is what they know, because they weren't there. They don't get to see the mechanism. So you have to provide them with as much information as you can. Number 8, how does potential patient outcome differ in a motor vehicle crash when a person is properly restrained compared with a person who is not restrained? Number 8, restrained patients are less likely to make impact with other objects in the vehicle than unrestrained patients. We talked about this a little bit ago when we talked about him not being restrained and the mechanism that we might see. The seatbelt helps to absorb some of the impact of the collision by decreasing the distance the body moves within the vehicle. Therefore, unrestrained patients tend to have more injuries as compared to those who are properly restrained. Our summary. As an EMS provider, you will respond to many emergencies resulting from trauma. Understanding the MUI is important in understanding how the injuries occurred and what type of potential injuries there may be. Remember, some of our most serious injuries are those that cannot be seen. It is vital that we not become focused only on the obvious injuries. Use your index of suspicion, recognize the MUI, and always provide the most beneficial and appropriate care. All right. So that is the case study for chapter 24. Hopefully, answering those questions with you kind of gave you an idea about what it is that I would like to see in your answers. Your case studies for 24 and 25 are due by Friday, and your quizzes for 24 and 25 will open Saturday morning at 12:01, and they close Sunday evening at 11:59. They're 20 questions. They're scheduled for a half an hour, so make sure you have some time to do them. And do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I do have one. Well, it's specific to this one, like what we were talking about. For example, if like writing up specifically like what to say to the hospital, I think that was in one of the questions, is including like how far to the extent should we include like specifically what damages to the vehicle? Like, should we say like it's part of a rollover, the roof was encaved in, or things like that?
Exactly. So all of the information that your partner gave you or that you saw on the scene, the fact that it was 30 feet from the road, there were significant skid marks, there was damage to the windshield, the steering wheel was deformed, there was 8 inches of intrusion in the roof. All of those things are important for you to include in your report, not only in your written report, but in your verbal report to the providers who are taking over your patient's care.
Okay.
Any other questions?
How's it going?
It's going. I mean, I don't know, it's going. I can't get into Schoology right now because Schoology is overwhelmed apparently. So it says
Yeah.
I got a message that said, make sure you use it when you're not during peak times. And those peak times continue until about 11 o'clock Eastern time. So you guys should be able to access this at some point.
Yeah,
But
I went on my computer and I couldn't like log into it, but then I went on my phone, and since I was already logged in, it had no problem with me looking at stuff and getting all of it.
oh, well, good. Okay. Any other questions about what we have going on?
What's your patient assessment music video gonna look like?
I'm not doing one, but thanks for asking.
And actually, for that, do we need to use these specific words and phrases in our trauma rubric, or can
Yes.
we? Okay.
You actually should use the words and phrases from our patient assessment lecture, because your trauma rubric doesn't include things like decapitated beetles or whatever, but that's included in our patient assessment lecture. So things like that should be included as well.
Okay. Because my team and I were doing lyrics and stuff, and we found it kind of hard to make it flow well
Yep.
and use the exact language. So we're gonna have to be tricky about it.
Some say tricky, some say creative.
Fair point.
So do we have to list out every single word, or do we provide examples for it, or do both?
Okay, so I can't get into Schoology. There's a rubric already in Schoology. Let me see if
I
I
have
can.
it open. Do you want me to read it or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Guidelines. Each member of your team must appear in the video. You must include all the steps outlined in our notes. For example, history should include sample, op course, and tacos. All acronyms must be broken down into their component parts. Lyrics should be published in your video, and spelling counts. You must also submit a copy of your lyrics to me. This is a large project and as such is worth 100 points. I will be using that rubric as a guideline for the grading and will include points for creativity, spelling, accuracy, and style. It should be submitted on a thumb drive in a format that my computer can read.
Yeah, so you can forget the thumb drive part of it, and I will create an assignment so that you can submit your video and your lyrics in the assignment itself.
So is publishing to YouTube and then sending it to you okay?
Yeah, you can send me the link. Normally, I don't like that because I want to be able to keep them and show them to other people, but you know, we're making changes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, next week, when we meet for this lecture next week, I'm going to actually lecture on chapter 27 because I noticed that there is not in my videos on YouTube, I don't have a chapter 27 lecture. Don't know where it went. It's not there. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time lecturing on chapter 27, which I believe is bleeding, maybe.
Bleeding is chapter 25. The
Okay.
next one.
So I don't remember what chapter 27 is. Head injuries, head and neck injuries, maybe? I don't know.
Yes,
Facing it.
face and neck.
Face and neck. Okay. So we'll spend some time lecturing on that next Monday. In the meantime, the easiest way for you guys to get a hold of me is to send me a message through Remind. I have a really difficult time getting on my email, my school email here at home. It doesn't work for some reason. It doesn't, I don't know why. It's never really worked well for me when I'm not on campus. And it's been that way for almost 5 years now. So the best way for you to reach me is to send me a message through Remind. We're winging it. We're going to make it. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get some people into my classroom either this week or early next week so that we can record the skills for you guys and get them posted to my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay.
For that chapter 27 lecture, is that going to be the one where we are muted and you're going to be recording the lecture?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I don't necessarily want it to be, I don't know. Let's see how many people show up because I prefer to have it interactive, which you all know. I don't do well with PowerPoints and stuff like that. I prefer to have it interactive, but at the same time, if I'm going to record it and then post it to my Schoology channel, I don't want it to be a distraction. I don't want people talking to be a distraction in that video.
Okay.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last call. Any other questions?
Hostable.
Oh, yes. I haven't even looked at the, I can't get to my email here. And so they sent the link out for our office hours time. They sent that link out through our email.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a struggle, but I will try and figure it out. I know we have a staff meeting today, so maybe I'll ask in that staff meeting. Our staff meeting's today at 3. So I'll ask in that staff meeting if we have a hostable schedule or whatever.
Okay.
No, that's not what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask if we have a complete office hours schedule so that I can find a time for hostable.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have the virtual hours, like you said. It has a few mistakes, like for Farm Tech, it's a senior class, but it's listed as a sophomore class.
Where's that at?
In
The
Excel that we were,
hours,
It was sent to you guys?
yeah.
yeah, we can send it to you. Forward
Well,
it if you have a document.
I probably have it in my email. The problem is that I can't get to my email.
Hmm.
So
I can share it to the Remind.
I'm sure I have it in my email. I'm sure I do.
But if you want, I can send this Zoom to the other hostable people, and we can figure out a time.
Well, let me just, oh, this is so dumb. 3 o'clock. Wow, it looks like we're busy all week long. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what you got?
Yes. Do we have any? Yeah, we have juniors, seniors, sophomores, and freshmen.
We could maybe do an evening one, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I'll send a message out in the HOSA Remind and ask people how they feel about an evening one. Like I could do maybe 9 o'clock on Monday evening, but let's just see how people feel about that.
Okay.
Okay. Because looking at this schedule, with the exception of 9 a.m. on Thursday or Friday, which apparently people don't really like, there doesn't really seem to be an open spot.
There might be a class that nobody in Hostable is in, like rehab services. I don't know of anyone in Hostable that's in that class. That's a senior class. But I don't think any of the seniors who are in that class are in Hostable. So we might be able to do a time like that where there's a class that nobody is in, possibly.
Okay. All right, let me send out those two options then. Thursday at 1 or like Monday at 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already online on Mondays because I take a class from ISU at 7. So Monday at 9 isn't that big of a stress for me or stretch for me. So let me see what I can do. I'll send out a remind. And there were only a couple of people, I don't know, 4 or 5 who responded that they would be interested in that. So let's make sure that it's something that everyone's interested in before we put our time into developing that.
I know, even though my group didn't all respond, I didn't respond. I am interested, but I believe my
How
whole.
am I supposed to know if people are interested if people don't respond, Trey?
Well, I don't know. You can't. I mean, we've been asking quite a bit.
So
Pestering.
I'll send out those two options. I'll send out Monday at 9 or Thursday at 1, right? That was the other option, Thursday at 1?
And Thursday and Friday at 9 to 10 was also.
Okay. All right. I'll send those out and we'll see what kind of responses we get.
Awesome.
All right. I hope I get to see you guys next week. I hope I hear from you between now and then. And I miss you. I wish we were in class because I miss it so much. And I will talk to you guys soon.
Miss you too.
Miss you too. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you.